Sailing. Will it ever exist in the game, or will it forever be in a poll? So, if you aren't aware, sailing is a skill that passed a poll a while back. I don't know how long ago it was, probably about a year ago. And Jagex has been showing some development on the skill. And the community of RuneScape is very against this skill. Obviously it passed a poll, so people wanted the skill. But now that Jagex has shown their hand on the skill, it's become very much a negative thought in the community. And so I'm of the opinion that although people wanted the skill in the game, and that's why they voted for it, I don't think Jagex can ever please the community and actually deliver on it. And that's definitely not a knock at the RuneScape developers. I think, in my opinion, the old school devs know more about what's good for the game than the general population of the game. Honestly, I don't like the polling system. I think the game would be better off if they kind of let the old school devs make certain decisions. I think there's definitely a time and place for polling, and certain things should get polled, but when it comes to major game changes, which a new skilling is a pretty big change, it's very hard to convince players that have sunk, thousands and thousands of hours, many, many years. It's very hard to convince them to allow such a major change into their world, so to speak. And so I don't believe sailing will ever end up in the game as a skill. I think what's likely to happen is that Jagex is gonna pose it as a mini game, because they've sunken a lot of dev time into this at this point, and so it would kind of be a waste to just throw it all away. And I think part of that comes from people's kind of reluctance to allow major changes. One thing that comes to mind is evolution of combat and how terrible that was to the game. And I don't think this is as severe of a change. It's just a skill, and at least from what I've seen, it has the possibility of being in the game without impacting anything else, right? I don't see best in slot combat gear coming from the skill, and I doubt it'll have major impact on leveling other skills. It might have some supplementary XP that you can get from maybe like fishing or hunting or something, but I don't see it being a massive game changer in any way. But that's beside the point, because when people see this being pulled and they see it in action, they see something that is vastly different from what's already in the game. And it's unfortunate because I think from what I've seen on the skill, it definitely has some work to be put in, but the skill itself has such high potential of being a great thing for the game. And for some reason, I don't know why, but it seems like the community does not put any trust into the developers of the game, which is to me really odd, because certainly they've posed some updates that weren't the best, but I feel like those are few and far between. I mean, you look at the history of the updates in this game, and I feel as though most of the major updates that really had a big positive impact on the game were not made by the community. I mean, I'm trying to think of different ones, but one thing that comes to mind is raids, right? I don't think the community was really chomping at the bit for them to add raids in the game. I think that was something that they kind of came up with as a solution to having, not enough end game content. And I remember when that first was pitched, a lot of people were against it. They were thinking, raids aren't something that RuneScape should have. That's too much like World of Warcraft or other MMOs. But you look at it now, and I mean, it's a very big part of the game. Probably the most viewed content, especially when it first comes out, is the raids. And I feel we have the devs to thank for that. Same with Infernal Cape, right? And when Infernal Cape was pitched, a lot of people were against it. They were thinking, oh, it's going to devalue my Fire Cape and this, that, and the other. But look at it now. It's kind of a staple part of the game that people respect and admire. And that's not to say that Jagex hasn't made mistakes. One opinion I have, which may not be very popular, is that I feel as though the Coliseum is kind of underwhelming. When they pitched us these ideas of it, this roguelike game mode where you kind of go against the waves and it gets harder as it goes. To me, when they pitched it, I was thinking of kind of like a Binding of Isaac type of game, right? But when it came out, it's not anything like that. The upgrades you get aren't beneficial to your character. And instead of getting exciting as it goes, it kind of just gets annoying, in my opinion. And also, the character design, I find the NPCs to be just very rushed. And, I do feel they did not do great on that. But of course, the Coliseum is just one part of that, massive update they made with the area that they added in. The whole area itself is phenomenal. I mean, it's a very beautifully designed area, and I think they definitely did a good job when it comes to that. But I'm not gonna sit here and say like Jagex is just always right and we should always trust them. But at the same time, I think if you had to ask me like, who do I trust more, the devs or the community? I would absolutely trust the devs over the community. I mean, so many potential updates have been pulled and they didn't pass, and people still bring it up to this day, like, why didn't this pass? Why didn't this pass? And really, that's just a part of the problem with the polling system, right? If you were to pitch an idea today, let's say a wilderness change, like let's say, oh, we're gonna add this boss to the wilderness. If some, wilderness clan, 100 or, I don't know how big these clans get, but let's say there's a 1,000-person PvP clan, they basically get the say on whether or not that gets introduced in the game. And the same goes with, say, an Iron Man poll suggestion. There's definitely an impact on the communities within the community that can determine whether or not these updates even get made. I mean, let's say a big streamer like a Bodhi came out and said, hey, I don't support this being in the game. More than likely, all of his viewers are going to have a certain perception of their choice changed because of, their favorite streamer. And, I'm no saint when it comes to that. I think, certain streamers and YouTubers that I look up to as being knowledgeable of the game and knowing what's right for it, they definitely impact, even my choice. But that's part of why I don't fully agree with the polling system. But that's beside the topic, right? The topic is, will sailing ever be in the game as a skill? And I do not see it happening. Not because the skill isn't good enough. I think too many people are basing what we see now as being the skill, when I really don't think it's that at all. I think, they've got a lot of development that they've got to do, and even, with what they've shown, it shows promise. I mean, considering what they're working with, right? RuneScape's a very old game. It's just, you wouldn't even expect that they could do this, in my opinion. Like having a controllable ship that can go across the entire world, and having interesting things happening while you're sailing and going through, and it's definitely a something I never thought could even be possible, and they're definitely, it's looking like it could be possible, right? But that's in concept. I just don't think in reality it'll end up going through, because people are always going to have complaints. They're going to look at it and say, oh, this just looks like every other skill. It's boring, grindy, or, oh, I don't think this is necessary in the game because, it doesn't align with the other skills, or, maybe the rewards are either too good or not good enough. Like there's just so many different things that people are going to complain about, and more than likely it's just not going to get through the polls. I hope it does. I think it would be nice for it to, because at least in my opinion, I think it would be great for the game. Um, and I know there's a lot of people that have argued that the other skill that was pulled, shamanism. A lot of people were supporting that, and a lot of people are hoping they would just go back to supporting that instead. But I don't think that would have made a difference. I think if shamanism was the case now, people would be complaining about something else. Like there's just, I would say RuneScape community is probably one of the hardest communities to please, right? I mean, so much time investment and so much power on the player too, right? Um, someone that plays World of Warcraft, they kind of just expect, Blizzard's gonna do what they're gonna do, and I'll play the game, and if it's good, it's good. If it's not, it's not. They don't feel like they have any say over it, really. They can complain to Blizzard about what's good and what's not, but RuneScape's a very unique game in that the players really do have control over the game. Like at the end of the day, the polls are what decides what gets added, and yeah, I'm kind of rambling on at this point, but I hope this skill gets added to the game. I really do. I think this community is very difficult to please, and Jagex will be jumping through hoops trying to please everybody. And if they stick to their guns on the polling system and say, hey, we need 80% approval or whatever it is, 70%, I just do not see this ever passing. I really don't.